Okay, so what's with all the evangelicals fleeing to Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches? This is a real phenomenon, and one that we can't simply ignore. I personally know several people who grew up in Protestant evangelical churches and are now members of the Church of Rome. There's also been some very public evangelical figures who have made their homes in Rome and Constantinople. In 2017, even the Bible Answer Man officially joined the Eastern Orthodox Church. Though he hasn't officially nailed down his position, it appears that Crazy Love author Francis Chan is taking steps in that direction also. So what do we do with all this? It's my experience that there are two main motives for evangelicals immersing themselves into the Tigris. And can I just add that I'm actually in sympathy with both these motives? However, it's my opinion that biblical, fundamental Protestantism better fulfills these longings than the Roman or Eastern Orthodox churches. Motive number one. Contemporary evangelicals are thirsty for worship that feels like worship. The contemporary Christian worship movement is now old enough to be traditional. Many Christians have gone their entire lives going to churches every Sunday where worship was accompanied by drums and bass guitars and led by men and women wearing jeans and t-shirts. In their minds, church is a place you go to in sweatpants and drink coffee and sing songs that 200 years ago would have been considered too juvenile for 10-year-olds. This casual approach to worship has left many Christians starving for something that feels weighty and reverent and religious. The Catholic Church appears to offer exactly that. If you walk into the Catholic Mass, everything about it screams gravitas. You have stained glass windows, Gothic architecture, incense, chanting in a dead language, centuries-old liturgies, and clergy wearing medieval costumes. Again, I'm actually in sympathy with this. I've also found myself being turned off by the informal liturgy of contemporary American worship and being drawn to something that feels ancient and real and serious. This isn't entirely illegitimate, but I think that seeking to fulfill this desire by migrating eastward is a mistake. So first of all, there's actually not as big a difference as you might expect between contemporary American liturgy and the Roman and Eastern liturgy. Ironically, they both have different means of fulfilling the same ends. In both cases, the goal of church is to create a certain mood and feeling. The Low Church seeks to summon God through sacramental music. The High Church seeks to summon the presence of God through sacramental bread. In contemporary churches, the priests wear jeans and t-shirts. In sacramental churches, the priests wear collars and robes. One church has smoke and lights, the other has smells and bells. And though an individual might transfer from the Low Church to the High Church, they take with them the same heart that is looking for a worship experience. In both cases, the same mistake is being made of thinking that we can conjure up worship through enough special effects. In many cases, the migration toward Rome is not a rejection, but an extension of postmodern relativistic existentialism. But those who worship God must worship Him in spirit and in truth and in the beauty of holiness. They must draw near to God with a sincere heart and full assurance of faith. Though we haven't always lived up to this ideal, the fundamental Protestant doctrine of worship best encourages us to do that. We believe in the radical idea that God knows how we should be worshipped better than we do. And so we regulate our worship by God's inspired word. Biblical worship is not about creating a certain mood, but about pointing our hearts and minds to the character and work of God. This is done through the preaching of the word and the singing of psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs that accurately reflect biblical truth. See, there's nothing more weighty than God Himself. You don't need to seek out a worship experience through either a Catholic priest or a contemporary praise band. God invites you to draw near to Himself through Christ. And I believe that the doctrines of fundamental Protestant Christianity best allow us to do that. Motive number two. Contemporary evangelicals are hungry for tradition and stability. When one looks around at all the different Protestant denominations, many of which were formed only 100 years ago or so, there's something appealing about a church that claims to have existed united and unchanged for the last 2 millennia. It gives great confidence to have a direct tie to Peter and Paul. Once again, I understand where this is coming from. I'm a younger man with a great deal of respect for that which is older. I respect tradition and the teachings of the past. But again, I think it's a mistake to think that these desires can be fulfilled in the Roman and Eastern context. It's just plain inaccurate to think that the Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy have remained unchanged for 2,000 years. Both have changed considerably, even in my lifetime, much less since the time of the Apostles. There are also many disagreeing groups within the Catholic and Eastern umbrellas. Their supposed unity is actually just a formal union based on allegiance to a particular pope or bishop. The idea that the apostolic tradition has been perfectly passed down from the time of the Apostle Peter to the time of Pope Francis is historically indefensible. However, we do have an apostolic tradition preserved for us sufficiently and inerrantly, but it is not preserved through the leaders of a particular religious organization. It's preserved in the apostolic word, the New Testament. Though many high churches try to appeal to historic precedent, you can't get any older in church history than the New Testament era itself. God inspired the apostles to write down everything he wanted us to know about their teachings in the New Testament. And in that written apostolic tradition, we have everything we need to be thoroughly furnished unto all good works. So the Reformers, the Baptists, the Fundamentalists were not, at least in their minds, inventing something new or just pulling doctrines out of the air. They were appealing to something older than the church hierarchies. In their minds, it was the Catholics, not them, who were the innovators and the breakers of the tradition. The beauty of sola scriptura is that we don't need to follow the supposed heirs of the apostles. We get to follow the actual apostles. And I'll take Paul and John over Francis and Kirill any day. If you're one of many Protestants who feel drawn to the Roman and Eastern churches, I get it. I understand the appeal, but don't be deceived. What you are actually seeking can be better realized within authentic fundamentalism. Biblically regulated worship can fulfill that longing for the presence of God more than any sacramental experience. The Apostolic New Testament is sufficient for life and godliness and can give you what supposed apostolic traditions cannot. To my fellow evangelicals and fundamentalists out there, we need to foster the kind of Bible-based, authentic worship that satisfies the deep longings of the heart. By not taking worship seriously, we have left people vulnerable to other movements that appear to. We should take this opportunity to embrace ordinate, sober-minded New Testament worship.